Our speaker today will be Holly Truhlar, and for those of you who weren't with us during the first hour, Holly blends her doctorate in law and master's in transpersonal counseling psychology to guide people and organizations from dominating and exploitative ways of being into attuned transformative relationships. She lives and works in the threshold of collective grief and trauma, conscious collapse, and social democracy. She's most interested in social technologies such as ritual and deep democracy work that foster large-scale trauma resolution and collective nervous system regulation. Thank you again, Holly, for being here.
Yeah, thank you, John. I appreciate that introduction, and I was thinking about it the other day about blending a law degree with a master's in transpersonal psychology, and I was thinking really I think what I've just been searching for is where the just and the holy can combine, and I really see you all doing this in your congregation, what you all are exploring and what you all value. So I'm really honored to be here talking to you all. And I'm just so grateful that you're including me in this. So I used to start every speech, every event with some explanation of what I meant by unprecedented times and collapse. What I meant by we're in for a reckoning. For better and worse, I don't have to do that in the same way anymore, because these days we all really see the collapse pretty clearly, and we hear the word reckoning all the time. So I'm talking about reckoning and repair, and I often put a W in front of that reckoning. That's how I see that word. One understanding of this word reckoning is a settlement of debts. Yes, we need more of that. Another is being called to account for one's actions. Yes, we need more of that. So, in many ways, I say, let the reckoning continue and commence. Practically speaking, to me, this looks like reparations, including land repatriation, wealth redistribution, anti-oppression legislation, police and prison reform, and funding for transformative justice programs. Basically, it looks like all the things Black and Indigenous communities are and have been calling for so long. While all of these calls for action are absolutely necessary, and we can't avoid any one of them if we're truly interested in a just and relational world, I'm also deeply interested in the deeply personal reckoning that many of us are being asked to sit with, particularly those of us, including myself, with systemic power, advantage, and privilege, particularly those of us who are white, cis, able-bodied, and financially stable. Here's how my imagination pictures this reckoning. We've created a wreck, the we being those of us with significant dominant identities. It's an absurd display of consumptive, non-consensual domination that's killing the planet and everyone who has less privilege and power. We may feel like we aren't the ones steering the ship, but at the very least, we're on board and complicit in the direction it's taking. More accurately, we've comfortably benefited from being on this Titanic. So now the Titanic has crashed and it's sprawled out for everyone to see. And I want to be clear here, oppressed communities have been aware of and experiencing this crash or collapse for a very long time. They are very aware of the wreckage. The wreckage we're all most widely seeing now includes racist police brutality in prison systems, a global pandemic, ecocide, deaths of despair, and economic inequality. So now, I see a lot of people rushing around trying to make sense of what's happening. Some people are trying to quickly piece back together the wreckage, get back to normal. Some people are trying to fix some of the harms we've caused or been complicit in, trying to erase some of the pain that we've caused and that we're no longer able to deny through willful ignorance. We're trying to create something better, something that will get us away from the wreckage we've created. But what I'm hoping for, what I'm calling all of us to do, is to just slow down. Let's stop for a moment. Let's stop and look at it, the fragments of life that are splayed out, the destruction, the murder of people and places we don't understand. The ways that bring grief, the ways that bring trauma, the way some people's, particularly white people's, comfort is valued more than other people's safety and lives. The way human lives are valued more than animal, plants, and entire ecosystems. Yes, let's sit with the mess many of us have created. Let's pick up the pieces and become intimate with one or two of the harms we've caused or let happen, or that are happening to us, and that are happening to us. Let's just look, just witness. It's not pretty, but it's where we're at. It's also where we can meet each other. It's where we can be deeply honest and uncomfortable about who we are, what's happened, what's happening, and who we want to be. It's where we can grieve and then start to repair, because informed action is wildly important too. This is the reckoning I'm interested in. This is an honest view of the wreckage, the collapse that has already happened for many oppressed people and communities, and is currently occurring and will continue to accelerate. This includes environmental, social, communal, cultural, political, economic, and personal collapse. I know that sitting in this wreckage is not an easy task. Our nervous systems, my nervous system, can become dysregulated and overwhelmed when we really begin to pay attention to the harm, the pain that's around us. We can feel guilt and even shame. I can feel guilt and even shame when we think about the ways we're non-consensually dominating and valuing some life over others. Yet, it's so necessary for those of us who've been able to exist somewhat comfortably, relatively safely in these oppressive systems to slow down and take it in. And one of the main ways I know how to sit in the wreckage and be honest about collapse is grief work. For those of you that joined in the first hour, we talked a lot about this, about the different gates of grief. And I have to say, I became deeply collapse aware about 5 years ago because of a series of personal griefs I was holding. My mom had had a heart attack. My sister was very sick. And I was recovering from a significant relationship breakup. These personal griefs led me into the collective grief of the sorrows of the world, the third gate of grief that we mentioned in the workshop earlier. And the truth is, I've been thinking about writing an essay that covered this ground that I'm talking about for a while. I've been talking about an essay titled Wreckoning and Repair for well over a year. And then about a year ago, my sister Ivy died. She's the second sibling I've lost. My brother Brett died unexpectedly when I was 10 years old. And I'm now 37 years old and have lost 2 siblings. Here's a picture of my brother Brett. He was a musician and pretty amazing. And here's a picture of my dad and me in the middle, and my sister Ivy. And what you don't see in this picture is that This was taken right after I was in a pretty horrific accident, and I love it because we're still together, smiling. Ivy was kind, courageous, creative, hilarious, and strong. I'm so lucky to have her as a sister. She was a poet and an artist. Her death was both sudden, unexpected, and unsurprising at the same time. She lived with a disability and a serious chronic illness, yet she was doing okay the weeks and days before her death. Her death brought on a much more personal reckoning that I've been intimately sitting in, on top of the collective unraveling that we're all in now. This loss, the loss of my beloved sister, was almost more than I could handle. It wrecked me in a way I couldn't have imagined, and yet I had been preparing for it for years because she was so sick. I think so much of me doing grief work in the world was me preparing for that moment. Mostly her death and her life, being here without her, has taught me how much more gentle and compassionate we need to be with ourselves and each other, always, and in these collapse times. How much we don't understand about each other. You see, even though I love and loved my sister deeply, I still didn't fully understand how hard her life as a person with a disability and a chronic illness was, and really just how hard being human is in these times. I didn't realize how much we treat people who don't fit within the parameters of what's normal and productive, how much we treat them as disposable, how much we treat everybody and ourselves as disposable, and how hard she had to work to simply be comfortable, to simply keep going. I get it more now that she's gone. I get it more now that I've sat with her literal things. I've gone through them. I've read more of her writing, and I've looked deeply at her art and her brilliant life. To be really honest about all the ways I missed her, I just didn't understand her, I just didn't give her the time, I took her for granted, is heartbreaking. And it's also not the entire truth. The ways we mess up or miss each other is never the entire truth. I also was there for her in many ways. I also found beautiful cards I'd given her when I was going through her stuff. And I remember times when we laughed together and stood up for one another. But if I'm not honest about the ways I didn't see her, didn't understand, then I would be continuing to cause harm to our relationship. And yes, I believe we're still in relationship. Then I would be continuing to cause unnecessary harm in the world. And I'm much more interested in repairing and continuing to tend to what was and is between her and me. There's no doubt there's some ways where it's just not possible to really repair now that she's gone. Sometimes we just aren't given more time. And there's ways where my honesty and sitting with some of the ways I wasn't there for her is honoring her, and it absolutely makes a difference. It's where there's just and holy ground. There's ways where my grief around her being gone is also evidence of my love for her. Again, that's holy ground. The hardest thing about all of this is that I can't do it alone. We can't face deep loss alone. It's too much. We need other people to be there in that wreckage with me. Thinking about and feeling my regrets with my sister brings me to my knees. It can sink me into a bottomless hole. It's a journey into the underworld for sure. And there's very few people that want to go there. But I can say that I am so incredibly grateful because I had some people in my life. I have some people in my life, such as Desiree, who you met before and who we'll read later, who were interested and willing to be there with me in my grief and my regret. One of the most supportive things I experienced after my sister died was a grief witnessing group. This was a group of 4 of my friends who agreed to meet every month and just listen to me cry and talk and remember my sister and remember my sister. They saw me in all my heartache. They saw me. They listened as I spoke of the sharpest pain in my life. They located me in the fog of grief that I was inhabiting. I also attended a gratitude and grief ritual with my partner, where again, I was witnessed in my pain. I was celebrated in all I brought. We, all of us there, were held by each other and by the sacred space of ritual. And I'm sharing this because I think it's the same thing we need in the collective reckoning we're all in. We all need to be witnessed and loved, especially when we've made a mistake or caused harm, especially when we're grieving, especially when death has visited. And we're all causing harm. We're all grieving now. We're all being visited by death in so many ways. One of my mentors, Francis Weller, has said, "The only way out is through, and the only way through is together." This is true. I see this being together and being deeply honest about what's happened and is happening as the repair work that's needed in these times. And it is work. It involves deeply listening and then taking right action. To me, repair means looking at the wreckage and seeing what should be, needs to be pieced back together, connected, repaired. It also involves being honest about what we need to compost, burn down, and let go of, and what our imaginations, and most critically, the imaginations of those who've been oppressed, can bring together or cultivate that isn't even in the collective awareness yet. In attachment-based psychotherapy and transformative justice, repair work is based in relationship. It's based on commitment and giving our full attention to whoever and wherever there's been a rupture, a harm, and it takes time. When I think about and feel into practicing repair, I can't help but think about my mule, Mr. Hermes Bohannon, or Bo for short. And by my, I simply mean I'm his guardian, or what some might call an owner, and we are friends. Here's a picture of Bo. Oh, it's kind of glary, but he's the little one. He's a miniature mule, Appaloosa mule. Bo was severely neglected and abused for the first 7 years of his life. He has scars from a halter that was embedded into his neck and nose and had to be ripped off. He's understandably vigilant and mistrusting of most humans. When I met him, he wouldn't let anyone come near him. Yet he was best friends with my horse, Miss J. So I thought I should probably get to know him. Day after day, I sat in the pasture with him, starting at least 20 feet away and simply moving with him as he grazed. I could sit within about 10 feet of him, 3 weeks or so in. And after 3 months, he came up and sniffed me. This was a glorious day. This was the day I knew we were building trust. Now, 4 years later, after spending time with him almost every day, he's still pretty vigilant. I have to move really slowly and consciously around him. And he lets me pet him. He trusts me to halter him when I need to. He comes up to me and my partner when we walk into his pasture. And I imagine in another 4 years, I might, maybe, be able to hug him. Maybe. We'll see. As the brilliant Adrienne Marie Brown has said, we need to move at the speed of trust. Honestly, there's no other way for us to fully be together. There's no other way for us, all of us, to repair. There's no other way for me to approach Mr. Bo. I just have to listen to and attune with Bo, because there's repair for us humans to do with him. There's repair for us humans to do with the world. There's repair for us humans to do with each other, especially those of us with more power and advantage than others, especially those of us who have the ability, time, and resources to spare. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to hug Mr. Bo. Probably unlikely, maybe. I don't know if we'll have the time to build that level of trust, but I know that I'm a better human for taking the time to repair and attune with him. I know that I'm learning more about how I want to show up from Mr. Bo and my sister Ivy than anyone else. And it's the same way, it's the same thing, it's the same way we have to be on the collective level. I don't know if we'll survive these times, the 6th great extinction. I don't know if we're here in hospice for humanity, or if we still need to fight like hell for what's sacred. Well, I do know it's likely and almost always both. I know that regardless of whether near-term human extinction is the reality, regardless of how far we're going to collapse as a species and a planet, the quality of our humanness depends on our ability to honestly sit in the wreckage and actively seek repair. Repair through listening and right action. Repair by asking those we've harmed what's needed now. Repair by following their lead. And repair by grieving. Overall, I think one of the deepest truths of these times is that they're scary and paradoxical. They're nuanced and non-binary. So, while I've just spent a lot of time talking about moving slowly, moving at the speed of trust, I also know that we as humans so often think we have more time when we don't. I thought I had more time with my sister, and I don't. We may think we have more time to intellectualize what's happening, put off our grief work, or initiate repair, but we don't. We're running out of time. And there's things we don't get another chance on. Just a couple days ago, Chadwick Boseman, the actor who played King T'Challa in the Black Panther movie, passed away from colon cancer. While he was embodying an incredible symbol of Black power and inspiring so many, he was also suffering from a serious and terminal illness. His dignity and grace is beyond my comprehension. And so much of who he was and the words he spoke both on and off screen will live on, including this quote: "You have to cherish things in a different way when you know the clock is ticking." You have to cherish things in a different way when you know the clock is ticking. Yes, the truth is the clock is ticking. So while I'm not saying this to encourage a sense of urgency, because reckoning and repair takes witnessing and time, I am saying this to encourage us all to cherish the people and places we love, the people and places that are sacred. In closing, I'd like to share this poem from my sister Ivy's book of poetry. The book is titled Dancing in the Kitchen in Karate Pants with Cigars and Sleeping Bags by Ivy Maxey Truhlar. The poem is titled Sick. Sick. I feel the ache of my old age. I feel it set into bones, muscles, wrinkles. I feel it when I talk to you, how young you are in body and mind. I feel the years of a life well spent, most of it anyway. I would not trade these scars and aches and wrinkles for all the money in the world. And when I think of all those mistakes made, I now look on them fondly, like old friends, long lost but not forgotten. And I have no envy for your youth. My time may be short, but it was worth every damn second. Thank you.